bars and restaurants if other entities are offering games in bars and restaurants. This will impact us, but once again, it meets our criteria, so we're fine with that. But we ask for your consideration, your accommodation for the charitable gaming bills that will come before you, because we would hate to have charity left behind and hurt principals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Jeb Hannum. I represent the Virginia Equine Alliance. The Equine Alliance represents the horse racing and horse breeding industry here in the state. We worked very closely with Colonial Downs over the last few years to reopen the track last year. That's brought enormous benefit to the agricultural industry in the state. For the first time in 6 years, we're now seeing horses come back to the state, and there are numerous benefits to all of the agricultural industry. The JLARC report pointed out in very stark terms the effect to the racing industry should casinos come in as was envisioned in the previous session, to the extent that there would be up to a 50% reduction in revenue available to the horse racing industry. So this would set us back to the point where we were in 2013 and 2014, where the racing industry was all but dead, and that obviously had enormous impact to the agricultural industry. So great strides have been made over the last 2 years, and we can continue to move that forward. But this legislation you have before you had provisions to help protect the racing industry. So the language in Section 5 at the end of the document has been crafted through great compromise, but also analysis to make sure that the racing industry is protected. If not, we will be back to where we were, and the track is very well closed. So with all due respect, I'd ask you to maintain that language as we've done the analysis to determine that that will keep us moving forward and where we are. Thank you very much, sir.
I think, follow-up question to you, sir. Before the committees are also instruments that would ban or gray machines or other machines. By doing so, would that also not improve your bottom line?
Again, getting back to the JLARC report, the casino, I think it was the casinos would have the most detrimental impact to the racing industry. I don't really want to get into the gray machines. I don't have that analysis for me, but I do know, referring back to the report, that they said there'd be up to a $10 million reduction in funds available, which again would bring us back to a point of where we were 5 years ago.
I appreciate the comments. As you can imagine, the subcommittee's been dealing with a number of moving targets, both in incumbency, some that are regulated, some that are not within our context, as well as considering setting up a new regulatory framework for casinos. So there are a lot of moving parts that have been before this committee. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right. The bills before you, Senator Lucas, do you want to wrap up? Sorry, Mr. Loria, you also want to speak?
Yeah, very quickly, Mr. Chairman. Miles Laird, representing Colonial Downs. Jeb outlined it very nicely why that Fifth Enactment is so important, but let me put a finer point on it. The JLARC report clearly indicated that Colonial Downs would lose 45% of its revenue with the advent of casino gaming, 45%. That impacts not only Colonial Downs, it impacts the $300 million that they invested, the 1,000 jobs that they provided for. What the group that has come together for this bill, with the leadership of Senator Lucas and Delegate Knight, is to recognize that. The JLARC report recognizes that incumbent gaming operators, when gaming is expanded, they get certain concessions. That happens in every state. This bill actually has that embodied in that Fifth Enactment clause. Without that clause, there is no concession given to the incumbent gaming operator. You are damaging horse racing, which last year you all decided you wanted to protect, the year before, excuse me, that you wanted to protect. So it's inconsistent with the elimination of the Fifth Enactment clause, inconsistent with what you've done to help support horse racing, number one, and also inconsistent with what other states have done when it comes to incumbent gaming operators. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Loria. Senator Lucas?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I was looking for my folder, but I don't need a folder to tell you what I need to say now. This has been a long time in the making, and as I indicated early on, this legislation was initially drafted to help localities that were in need of economic development. And as the bill expanded, it included more and more localities that were similarly situated as the city of Portsmouth. I wanna say, first of all, these 5 localities are welded together at the hip. We will not be separated, that's one. Because in the agreement, we decided that we will move forward together. We don't want there to be any effort to try to break us apart, pick us off, because that's not likely to happen. Your vote in support of this legislation is gonna help a significant number of localities and their residents in the city in this Commonwealth of Virginia to be able to determine their own destiny, and that is all we're asking of you. Not a handout, just give us an opportunity to determine our own destiny. And so with that, it is now in your hands.
Thank you, Senator Lucas. I believe there's still, any follow-up questions? I believe there's still some questions before the committee in regards to minority participation that I'm not sure. I think through the testimony, we've heard some really good comments today that I'm not sure that the bill we saw in other bills had some minority participation language. This one does not. And so just look to the committee of follow-up questions on how to address it. As well as, I think there's a second inconsistency with the city of Richmond's locality driven when we're actually driving to 2 choices in this condition. And so I'd open up to the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, on the minority participation, I'm going to work with Mr. Wade to see if we can come up with an amendment for finance, particularly looking to the JLR report. I believe it addressed percentages and how it worked in other states or localities. And rather than tinker with it here unless the committee wants to, I think that we should, I'll bring something forward on finance.
Yeah. Senator Bell?
Mr. Chairman, this might be for people back to the racing, on the historical racing. Can you tell us how you arrived at your 1,800 machines?
At 1,800 machines, that was the number that we, I think, felt that was appropriate for that Northern Virginia region.
Okay, but was that like with the JLR calculations to try to make that whole, or was that?
Making us whole actually would have required us to have about 5,000 machines. This is not about making us whole, this is just about us trying to get done.
And number of racing days? My understanding racing days were cut last year, is that correct?
No, sir. So we had 15 days last year, and we're going to be increasing to 18 days this year. The hope is to get up to 30 days within the next couple of years. There's language in the current regs that spell out a formula for the number of machines to race days. And then the Racing Commission can make a determination as to the best interests of number of days based on the Mid-Atlantic region. So there's a formula, and then the commission has discretion to tweak that formula so Virginia has the appropriate number of days based on funds available. But the language in Section 5 that we're discussing would enable the racing industry to get to 30 days. Without that language, I feel very strongly that racing would probably cease to exist, and the track's viability would be in question. So it's a very stark difference.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick statement on this. My recollection when we approved this was we were going to get 25 days, was what we were trying to shoot for. So I would be willing to reconsider this at the Finance Committee, this enactment clause, but the problems I had was the shall. I had a problem with the shall language on that. And then the number of machines and no commitment to racing days. Those are things I would want to have addressed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Bell. All right, before the committee is the bill, any action or recommendations regarding the minority participation in regards to Richmond? And this is still the one inconsistency that remains, is we've reported the 4 locations with locality-driven option. However, the bill before us stipulates a 2-member participation. In other words, 2 entities to participate. How does the committee resolve that conflict?
Mr. Chairman, I think you're looking to the committee for resolve, is that correct?
I'm open to comments from the patron as well. All right, hearing none. The bill's before the committee.
Report as amended. The substitute.
There's a motion to report the substitute as amended. All in favor, say aye.